My name is Carrie Imel. Most people just call me Carrie, and I'm 32 years old. The Tuesday the text arrived, Bangkok was rinsed in a late afternoon storm that couldn't decide if it wanted to be dramatic or just humid. My phone buzzed. Dad. Family dinner. Friday. Morton's. 7:00 p.m. Your brother's treating. Dress nice. Not an invitation, a directive. I typed back, sounds good. Dad replied, classy place, which, in dad speak, meant don't embarrass me. I should explain the family scoreboard before we sit down at the table. I write code and keep my plants alive. Comfortable salaried job, enough savings to sleep at night. My older brother, Connor Imel, is 35 and speaks fluent bonus. Investment banking. Watch glinting. A house with a lawn that looks airbrushed. Before Mom died 2 years ago, she ran interference, insisting the two of us were equal in her eyes. After she was gone, the balance evaporated. Dad's gaze followed the shine. Connor closed a 7-figure deal, became the family weather. I became the forecast he never checked. And then there's Victoria, Connor's wife with the immaculate dress and immaculate disdain. Old money finishing school, new money, taste for spectacle. At their wedding, she tacked my place card to table 17 near a man named Todd who lectured me about crypto like he'd invented math. We orbit the same family photos, but not the same room. Morton's on Friday was an arena. I parked 3 blocks away because the valet sign said $30 and my petty refused. The hostess glanced at my rain-touched hair like I'd tracked in a puddle. Reservation? She asked. Email. Under Connor. Her smile flipped like a switch. The good tables live where the steaks breathe different air. Right this way. Dad stood when he saw me, suit pressed into a sermon. Connor's jacket looked like it had opinions. Victoria's dress was the kind you can only buy if someone else says you look like money. There she is, Dad said, in the tone of a man greeting his dental hygienist. I slid in next to Victoria. She imperceptibly shifted a millimeter, as if my elbow might carry a discount. You look nice, Dad offered, which is Midwestern for try harder next time. Connor didn't look up from his phone. Glad you could make it. Been crazy busy, he announced, to no one in particular. The waiter arrived with the choreography of a minor aristocrat. Drinks to start? The Camus, Connor said, not looking at the menu. Special selection. A $200 flex disguised as a pour. The waiter turned to me. Water's great, I said. Victoria made a small sound, a tiny bell of judgment. So, Connor asked, in the tone of someone humoring a child's hobby, still doing the computer thing? Still doing the computer thing, I said. We just shipped a major feature. Stable, he nodded. Steady paycheck. He traded a glance with Victoria. Not everyone's cut out for risk. I inhaled. Exhaled. The menu's prices looked like phone numbers. Ribeye 48 Oz. A steak with its own gravitational pull. Surf and turf like an Instagram mood board. My eyes landed on the salmon because it was the least offensive to my wallet at $70. Before I could decide whether my dignity or my rent would suffer, Connor cleared his throat. Actually, he said, a heads up. We're celebrating my promotion, 7-figure territory, so we're ordering for ourselves tonight. Dad added, we didn't order for you. Didn't want to presume. The words slid across the table like a receipt. Victoria's smile turned sympathetic. We thought you'd appreciate the flexibility, she said. You can do what's comfortable. It sounded kind. It wasn't. Do what's comfortable. The sentence lodged like a fishbone. The waiter hovered. With a pen that had seen battles, Connor ordered the ribeye with truffle butter and sides upon sides. Victoria chose filet and lobster, extra lobster, with a kind of velvet entitlement. Dad went New York strip, loaded potato, creamed spinach, the classics of a man who wants to prove he belongs here. When the room looked to me, I closed the menu. I'll have the bread basket, I said. The waiter blinked. The bread basket is complimentary, ma'am. Perfect, I replied. That's what I'll have. Victoria tilted her head like I'd spoken a dialect. You can't just eat bread, she whispered. I'm not that hungry, I said, and because honesty itched, I'm here for the company. Connor coughed a laugh. If that's what you want. While their plates were being composed in the kitchen like symphonies, Victoria texted, thumb twitching, the screen lighting her cheekbones like a stage. Dad offered anecdotes that were actually Connor advertisements. I watched a server parade a steak the size of a newborn past us and imagined the check arriving like a dare. Our table filled. Connor's ribeye glistened. Victoria's surf and turf gleamed as if it knew cameras. Dad's strip sat like a thesis statement. The bread basket arrived. Sourdough, wheat, herb rolls, butter like soft sunlight. I buttered a roll and stepped into the quiet ritual of survival. Bread, in that moment, was a thesis too. Try some, Connor said, magnanimous, lifting a slice of his ribeye. It felt like a test. I'm good, I said. He made a sound people make when they want strangers at other tables to know they're enjoying luxury. Appetizers evaporated. Sides were prodded. Dessert menus appeared with the stealth of a plot twist. I declined. Somewhere between the second pour of Camus and Victoria explaining why some restaurants are for people who understand them, the bill arrived. Leather folder, heavy like judgment. Dad waited 5 seconds, 10, then he cleared his throat. Shall we split this? Fairly? Fairly, Connor echoed. A simple word, freshly sharpened. I opened the bill. $1,247. I tracked the line items like a homicide detective. Ribeye with truffle butter. Surf and turf. Extra lobster. New York strip. Sides. 2 desserts. Wine. And at the bottom, like a punchline, bread basket. Complimentary. So, Connor said, quick math. 4 ways about 300 each. For bread? I asked, polite confusion carrying a hidden blade. You were part of the dinner, Dad said. We're family. I set 3 singles on the white tablecloth. They looked like a flag. There, I said softly. That's for the butter. Connor went crimson, then pale, like the steak's cooking chart in reverse. You're joking. You wanted fair, I said. Bread was complimentary. Butter tasted about $3 worth of dignity. Victoria's mouth opened and gathered adjectives it didn't release. This is embarrassing, she breathed. For whom? I asked, genuinely curious. No one answered. I stood, slid on my jacket, and met Dad's eyes. There was a flicker, shame wearing a father's face. Thank you for inviting me, I said. I looked at Connor. Congratulations on your promotion. Then I walked out. Past tables cocooned in wine and leather, past a hostess who pretended not to remember my rain hair, past a valet I didn't use out of principle, into night air that smelled like wet pavement and relief. My phone vibrated an aria in my pocket before I reached the corner. I didn't answer. I let the city's hum drown the urgency they wanted to rent. At home, I shut the door, pressed my spine to it, and waited for the guilt to arrive. It didn't. Not the old kind, the kind trained into me since childhood, the be easy, don't make waves, pay for peace kind. In its place was something steadier, a baseline. I poured a drink and finally looked at my phone. Missed calls stacked like dominoes. Texts from Connor, from Dad, from a number saved as Victoria, temporary, because I never let myself believe she'd be permanent. You owe Dad $300. This is typical of you. You embarrassed us. Classless. I set the phone down, then picked it back up and did the thing I do best. Documented. Every line. The invite that said your brother's treating. The moment Dad said, we didn't order for you. The word fairly hung like a chandelier of knives. I wrote until the night thinned. I edited names. I posted it on Reddit and hit submit before I could talk myself into swallowing it. One more text arrived as my eyes finally went heavy. An unknown number. Stories like that don't stay at the table. They spill. Be ready. No name, no emoji, just a truth that felt like a forecast. The room went quiet. I slept for once on the right side of a boundary. When morning came, sunlight sliced through my blinds like it had something to prove. My phone was still buzzing, relentless. Notifications stacked so high the screen froze twice before I could even unlock it. 47 missed calls. 68 texts. Connor, you seriously just walked out? Connor again. Dad had to cover you. You owe him $300. Victoria. Absolutely classless. Do not expect another invitation. Dad. We'll talk later. I'm disappointed, Carrie. That word, disappointed, had been his favorite weapon since I was 12. It used to gut me. This time, it just rolled off. I sat on the edge of my bed, reading message after message, each one twisting the story into something new. In their version, I'd humiliated the family. I'd abandoned them. I'd made a scene. But in my version, the only one that actually happened, I'd eaten free bread, stayed quiet, and refused to pay $300 to subsidize a celebration I was never part of. I opened my laptop, clicked Reddit, and checked the post I'd written at 4 a.m. Title: Family invited me to an expensive dinner, said my brother was treating, then told me to split the $12,200 bill after I only ate bread. It had 3.2K upvotes. By noon, it had 10K. By lunch, 35K. People weren't just reading, they were rallying. They invited you to watch them eat. That's not dinner, that's performance art. $3 for butter is poetic justice. Boundaries taste like sourdough and self-respect. I laughed. The first real laugh in weeks. But beneath it, nerves hummed. I hadn't expected it to explode. Then came the DMs. Strangers telling me their own horror stories. The brother who invited them to family brunch, then split the champagne bill 6 ways. The cousin who made them chip in for gas. After a wedding, they'd flown across the country to attend. Apparently, my $3 protest had touched a universal nerve. But then the tone shifted. A new message. You think you're clever? Victoria's telling everyone you dined and dashed. My cousin works at Morton's. Everyone's talking. I stared at that text. My stomach tightened. Victoria's social circle was a small empire of curated image, and apparently, I'd just become their favorite villain. The phone rang. Aunt Linda. Her voice was low, cautious. I heard about last night. Connor called you, didn't he? He did, she admitted. Said you walked out on a family dinner, left your father to foot the bill. That true? That's one way to describe it, I said. Want to hear the other? And I told her everything. The invite, the we didn't order for you moment, the bread, the check, the $3. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Then a small sound, a laugh. Genuine, surprised. I shouldn't laugh, she said between breaths. But God, Carrie, that was overdue. Overdue? Your brother's been walking all over you for years. So has your father. You think I don't know? Your mom used to call me about it. She'd say, Connor gets the attention, Carrie gets the expectations. My throat tightened. Mom used to say that too, but I hadn't heard it out loud since her funeral. Aunt Linda continued, her voice warm now. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. You just refused to pay the entry fee for their delusion. That's all. I didn't realize I'd started crying until my vision blurred. Dad says I embarrassed the family, I whispered. He's embarrassed because he enabled it, she said flatly. He's mad at himself, not you. That line hit deep, because maybe she was right. Listen to me, Aunt Linda added. They'll try to guilt you back into submission. Don't let them. You set a boundary. Keep it. After we hung up, I felt lighter, but also aware that the ground was shifting beneath me. That night, my Reddit post hit 100,000 upvotes. A podcast clipped my story. Memes appeared. One of me walking out of Morton's with the bread queen in bold letters. Another read, when they ask for your share, give them $3 and peace of mind. By midnight, I was trending. Not by name, thankfully. I'd kept it anonymous. But still, the internet had opinions, and it was wild watching my family dinner become public folklore. Then another DM appeared. Hey, weird question. Are you the bread girl? I frowned. The username looked familiar. Ethan Park/PM. I knew that name. Ethan, product manager. Same building, same elevator rides. Always polite, coffee in hand. If you are, I just wanted to say, you're kind of a legend. Dignity costs what it costs. I smiled despite myself, didn't reply. Not yet. Then another message popped up, this one from an unknown number. Dad's lawyer says what you did could be considered theft of services. I stared at the text for a long moment, then typed back. Tell Dad's lawyer I paid for my services, $3 for butter. Itemized receipt available upon request. No reply. I turned off my phone, leaned back, and laughed until my chest ached. The next morning, Aunt Linda texted me a single line. They're angry because you finally stopped being the quiet one. She was right. For the first time in my life, silence wasn't my armor. It was theirs. And I'd just broken it. By Sunday morning, the story wasn't just viral. It was immortal. The bread girl. That's what strangers were calling me online. Someone edited a fake movie poster. The bread girl. Based on a true dinner. Tagline. $3 for butter. Priceless for peace. My inbox flooded with interview requests. podcasts, blogs, even a food columnist wanting to discuss the symbolic power of bread in boundary setting. It was absurd and a little healing. Still, behind the viral glow, the family storm raged on. Connor texted again. "You humiliated us." People at my office recognized the story. Then another. "Dad's furious. He says you're tearing the family apart over a dinner bill." I typed a reply, deleted it, then wrote something simple. Maybe the family was already cracked. Dinner just showed the fracture lines. I hit send. Hours later, a new text from Dad. "You owe your brother an apology. He was celebrating a milestone. You made him look cheap." I stared at those words. Cheap. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Instead, I replied, "I didn't make him look cheap, Dad. He did that himself when he tried to charge me $300 for watching him eat." No response, just silence. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Aunt Linda. She replied with a thumbs up and, "Don't you dare apologize. Proud of you, kiddo." That night, I got another DM. This time from Ethan, the coworker who'd messaged me before. "Sorry if this is weird. Just saw the story blowing up. If you ever want to vent over coffee, I know a cafe that doesn't charge $300 for the privilege of existing." I read it twice. His humor was dry, the kind that didn't ask for approval. I replied, "As long as there's bread involved." "Always," he said. We met the next afternoon. Small cafe, local, warm light, no pretense. Ethan was exactly as I remembered. Neat, calm, that quiet confidence of someone who listens more than he talks. He stirred his coffee, eyes curious, but not prying. "So, how does it feel being a national symbol for setting boundaries?" I snorted. "Weird, like I started a cult of carbs." He smiled. "Well, every revolution needs its carbs." We talked for an hour, about work, about family, about how absurd it is that respect can feel like rebellion. I found myself saying things I hadn't said out loud in years, about how after Mom died, Dad's approval became a currency I couldn't afford, how Connor's success turned into a family scoreboard, how silence had become my survival strategy. Ethan listened. No interruptions, no pity, just presence. When I apologized for oversharing, he said something that made me pause. "People confuse generosity with subsidy," he said. "You were generous for showing up. They wanted you to subsidize their self-image. You didn't. That's not rude. That's healthy." For the first time since that dinner, I felt understood. He walked me to my car afterward. The city air smelled like coffee and new beginnings. Before we parted, he smiled. "Hey, I'm glad you chose bread. It's a power move." "Power move?" I laughed. "Sure," he said. "In history, bread has started revolutions." Something in his tone, half joke, half truth, stayed with me. That night, I opened my laptop again. The Reddit post had exploded past 300,000 upvotes. People from everywhere, teachers, nurses, even a retired accountant, shared their own bread moments. Times they refused to pay for emotional or financial manipulation disguised as family duty. I read each one until my eyes blurred. Then I saw an email titled, "I used to be the other sibling too." It was from a woman in her 40s named Diane. She wrote, "Carrie, I read your story. My brother was the golden child too. I spent years covering for him, paying his bills, showing up to dinners I couldn't afford. When I finally said no, everyone called me selfish. Your story made me realize I wasn't selfish. I was just done." Her last line hit me harder than I expected. Standing your ground doesn't make you cruel, it makes you visible. I sat back in my chair, tears pooling. For the first time, it felt like what happened wasn't just humiliating. It meant something. Then came the next twist. At midnight, I got a call from Aunt Linda, unusual for her. "Carrie, have you checked Victoria's social media?" she asked. "No, why?" "She's spinning it. She posted this long note about how you stormed out and left your father with the bill. Claims you were ungrateful and unstable." I opened the app. There it was. A polished caption under a filtered selfie at Morton's. "Family means showing grace even when others don't. Some people just aren't raised that way." The comments were full of sympathy emojis and hashtag family first hashtags. She'd turned the narrative into a morality play, and I was the villain. My hands shook. The humiliation I thought I'd buried surged back. But then a new comment appeared, one that made me exhale through a laugh. "The bread girl official. Grace is free, so is bread. Funny how you charged for both." I didn't write it. Someone else had, one of the readers from Reddit, apparently. And just like that, the tide shifted again. People flooded her comments, calling out her hypocrisy, By morning, she'd turned her account private. Aunt Linda texted me, "Karma moves fast when you don't chase it." I smiled at my screen. Still, deep down, a chill lingered, because I knew this wasn't over. When people like my family lose control of a story, they don't apologize. They retaliate. By midweek, silence had settled like fog. Not peace, just the pause before thunder. Dad hadn't called. Connor hadn't texted. Victoria had vanished offline, which for her meant something was brewing behind closed doors. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt watched. At work, whispers started. Someone in marketing joked, "Hey, Carrie, any plans to charge us $3 for office bagels?" I laughed it off, but my chest tightened. How did my coworkers know? Then I saw it. A group chat screenshot someone had sent around. My Reddit post side by side with Victoria's caption. It had been forwarded from Sophie, the company's external PR consultant. The name made my stomach twist. Ethan had mentioned her once. His ex-girlfriend. PR shark. Loves drama. Still friends with Victoria. That afternoon, Ethan found me in the break room. He looked tense. "Hey, I think I know how your story leaked." "Victoria?" I guessed. He hesitated. "Technically, Sophie. She saw Victoria's post, realized it was you, and told her agency. Now it's floating around as a viral case study." I let out a shaky laugh. "Great. So now I'm not just the bread girl. I'm a corporate legend." He looked guilty. "I'm sorry. She shouldn't have done that." "It's not your fault," I said quietly. "It's just, it keeps spreading." Ethan nodded, eyes soft. "If it helps, you came off as the sane one. Everyone loves you. Sophie just likes being where the fire is." I forced a smile. "Yeah, I've met people like that." But inside, something burned. The same people who mocked me at that dinner were now turning my boundary into content. That night, Aunt Linda called again. "You all right?" I sighed. "They're turning this into PR spin now." "You still got those texts? The invite? The screenshots?" "Every single one." "Then you've got receipts," she said. "If they want to play public, show the truth. But do it once. Clean. No screaming." Her voice was firm, like Mom's used to be. I took her advice. The next morning, I posted a quiet update on Reddit. No insults, no exaggeration, just screenshots. The invite, your brother's treating. Dad's message, "We didn't order for you." Victoria's comment, "Be grateful you're even invited." The internet did the rest. Within hours, the comments exploded. "She's got receipts, folks." Victoria gaslighting in 4K. Imagine calling someone cheap when your husband's steak costs $400. By noon, Victoria's narrative collapsed under its own weight. She deleted her post. Then my father called. I stared at his name flashing on my phone. My pulse ticked faster. I almost let it go to voicemail. But then I thought, no, if I can face Reddit, I can face him. "Dad," I answered. His tone was clipped. "We need to talk." "I figured," I said. He sighed. "This has gone too far, Carrie. You've embarrassed this family enough." I let silence stretch before answering. "I didn't embarrass the family, Dad. I just stopped pretending." "You made Connor look bad." "Connor made himself look bad. I didn't tell him to spend $400 on a steak." "It wasn't about the money," he said tightly. "It was about family. Family doesn't hand you a $200 bill and call it love." That silenced him for a moment. Then his voice softened. "You've changed since your mother passed." "No, Dad," I said. "I just stopped trying to earn what should have been unconditional." He didn't reply. The weight of his breath filled the pause. Then, almost reluctantly, "I covered your share that night." "I know. I didn't want to make a scene." "You didn't want to challenge Connor," I corrected. "And I get it. You've been protecting his pride my whole life." There was a long silence, the kind that sounds like glass cracking. Then he said quieter, "I didn't realize how much that cost you." I felt my throat tighten. "Now you do." He cleared his throat. "Well, it's done now." "Not quite," I said softly. "I'm done, Dad, but that's not the same thing." He didn't argue. He just said, "Take care of yourself," and hung up. For a moment, I stood there frozen, heart pounding, hands shaking, realizing it wasn't anger I felt. It was relief. The conversation I'd feared my whole life had finally happened, and I hadn't crumbled. That night, Ethan dropped by with takeout. He didn't ask questions, just set down a brown paper bag and said, "Figured you could use something you didn't have to pay $300 for." I laughed. "What's in it?" He grinned. "Garlic bread, obviously." We sat on my couch, eating quietly, TV flickering in the background. Somewhere between the second slice and a comfortable silence, he spoke. "For what it's worth," he said. "Sophie tried to stir things up at the office too. I told her to stop, told her I was on your side. I looked at him, surprised. That must have gone well? He chuckled. She threw a drink at me. In her defense, it was iced coffee, so technically refreshing. I laughed until I almost cried. Ethan, you didn't have to do that. I did, he said, because people like them think silence means guilt. You reminded me it can mean peace. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just leaned back, the scent of garlic and quiet solidarity filling the room. Later that night, another notification lit up my phone, an anonymous Reddit DM. Victoria's deleted everything. Word is, someone leaked your brother's text too. People saw the "we didn't order for you" line. She's finished. I stared at it for a long time. For once, I didn't feel triumph, just closure. They'd built their house on image. All I did was hand them a mirror. And sometimes that's enough. A week later, the noise faded. No more calls, no new posts, no viral chaos, just silence, the kind that used to scare me, but now felt like oxygen. My story had burned through the internet like dry paper, and all that remained were fragments, memes, quotes, and one truth I couldn't unlearn. Peace isn't free, but it's cheaper than guilt. Then, one morning, a message popped up from Connor. Still think you overreacted, but I get it now, sort of. I read it twice. Sort of. The email family's version of an apology. I didn't respond. Some doors close quietly, and that's how you know they're supposed to. Dad stopped texting. Aunt Linda said he'd been quieter lately, thinking about things. She didn't push for reconciliation, and I didn't ask for one. It was strange, this new version of life without the constant hum of trying to please everyone. I'd expected loneliness, but what I found instead was space. Space to breathe, to rebuild, to choose who got a seat at my table. One night I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine and my laptop open. I wasn't doom scrolling or defending myself online anymore. I was writing about family, boundaries, the way small acts of defiance can rewrite entire histories. Words flowed easier now that I wasn't writing for approval. That's when my phone buzzed. Ethan, dinner tonight? My treat. No bread required. I smiled. As long as it's not Morton's. Deal. There's this little Italian place. The only thing they overcharge for is laughter. That night, I met him at a quiet spot downtown. No marble tables, no $200 wine, just warm lights and the smell of garlic. Over dinner, Ethan told me Sophie had finally backed off. She tried to spin a story about you being unstable, he said, but no one bought it. Turns out people love a good redemption arc. Redemption? I raised an eyebrow. He grinned. You didn't just walk out of that restaurant. You walked out of a pattern. Most people never do. I blinked, surprised at how much that line hit. I didn't think of it that way. You should, he said. That night wasn't about bread. It was about value. You finally decided yours wasn't negotiable. I smiled. I guess you're right. After dinner, he walked me to my car. We stood there a moment, quiet, comfortable. Then he said softly, you know, sometimes the best revenge is living without resentment. I nodded. And garlic bread helps. We both laughed. Over the next few weeks, life settled into something simple. Work, laughter, dinners that didn't feel like tests. Ethan and I started seeing each other more often. He called me bread girl sometimes, if he found, affectionately, and I didn't mind. Then one evening, Aunt Linda dropped by with an envelope. Your father wanted me to give you this, she said. Inside was a short note in Dad's handwriting. Carrie, I read what you wrote online. I didn't like seeing our family that way, but maybe that means I needed to. Your mother would have said you got your backbone from her. She'd be proud. Dad. I sat there staring at the page. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was the closest he'd ever come. Aunt Linda smiled knowingly. See? Sometimes the quiet ones finally listen. Later that night, Ethan and I made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta, a cheap bottle of wine, and a tray of homemade garlic bread. He buttered a slice, handed it to me, and said, For the record, I'd pay $3 for this butter. I laughed. Then we're even. We ate on the couch, barefoot, Netflix humming in the background. No arguments, no expectations, just warmth. For the first time, I understood something simple but profound. Setting boundaries doesn't end relationships. It edits them down to the honest ones. Connor would always be Connor. Dad might always measure worth by success, but I didn't need to keep auditioning for love that should have been unconditional. Sometimes you pay for peace, sometimes you earn it, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you find someone who reminds you that the right people never charge you for staying. As I leaned back, the smell of garlic filling the room, I realized that the true price of admission wasn't money. It was self-respect. And for once, I'd finally paid in full.